All right. So today we've got Keith Brannan from Bancvue, and some of you may know the story. So I heard Gabe Cradgick. I never can remember.
That's not how it's spelled, but that's how
I never can remember how to pronounce his last name. Anyways, he came and talked to an Owen entrepreneurship breakfast. I want to say about a couple of years ago. And Gabe has Nashville roots. He was part of Dealer Skins, an early company here back in the late 2000s. And the company that he started with Bancvue has an incredible culture, and that's one of the things I was drawn to when he did that presentation. I'm a big believer in culture driving the long-term performance of a company. So, and Keith promised me that some of that would come out in this presentation, even though this presentation is not about the company and its deliberate culture, but about what they've been doing in the financial space to help smaller banks and community banks win against the big financial services firms. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Keith, and he'll take it from here.
Great, thanks, Paul. Hi, how's everybody doing?
Great, great.
Is anybody in financial services, by the way? What do you do in financial services, sir?
Director of Marketing for a small community bank.
Community bank, fun. We're gonna have a lot of stuff to talk about. Which one?
Civic Bank and Trust.
Okay.
I do freelance marketing for community banks.
Okay, this is gonna be fun then. Great, you guys?
Bank training, bank marketing.
Okay.
Marketing agency for banks.
Agency for
banks.
just in general?
It's gotta be larger.
That's where I put all my money.
Perfect, me too, me too. Keep doing that, we like that. Put it in a community bank, by the way, because we love them a lot. And how about you, said you're financial services?
I work for a marketing company that specializes in financial.
Okay, awesome. Well, this should be great. So, how many people in here are with what you consider a challenger brand or know what challenger branding is? Okay, your challenger brand, what's your challenge to? Who's your market leader versus you guys?
James Hardy.
Okay, perfect. Anybody else?
We are a challenger brand. Our big brand we challenge is Tint.
Tint.
So we're the social media marketing application.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what challenger branding is from just an academic standpoint, and then some rules. Now, I've been managing challenger brands for a while, so we'll start with I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Bancvue. I have 2 challenger brands now that we run. I'll tell you about those as we get going, but let's start with a little bit of additional information on challenger branding. Now, I specifically used video that had larger players in it. And the reason I use that is because they're really easy for people to identify with. Everybody knows those specific brands and the things that they did for an industry. So it'll make it easier when we talk about the sort of the 4-quadrant model of challenger branding in a minute for everyone to identify with them. But most challenger branding doesn't actually take place at that level of scale because a lot of things happen before you become that company that is a market leader like that. You can be bought, you can be crushed. There's a lot of very interesting things that happen to challenger brands. So we're going to talk about how they do that. And so for me personally, I have 2. So for a living as the CMO of Bancvue, I have 2 challenger brands. The first one is a B2B challenger brand, right? So we actually, from lack of a better description, we go and we install checking accounts and savings accounts at community banks and credit unions. It's a very technically driven integration product. So on the B2B side, community banks and credit unions are my primary customers. We have 750 of them total, just over 300 on the Kasasa platform, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. So from a challenge standpoint, that particular brand is extraordinarily competitive because its checking account is extraordinarily competitive with large core integrators. These are the people that like do all the GL on the back end of a banking system. Jack Henry, Fiserv, FIS, $1 billion+ companies, all of them. And so in that case, we're a challenger brand to displacing some of what they're doing, and in some cases, homegrown systems. On the other side of the equation, we have a brand called Casasa, which is consumer facing. So if an institution buys one of our checking accounts, we then help them market it and distribute it using a single brand. So most of the time, community banks and credit unions, they'll name a product, right? So you get a checking account, one of them is called free checking, down the street you've got extra free checking, and down the street from that you've got super extra free checking. And consumers can't make out the difference, so we created one brand, and we'll tell you how we created that brand and what we do with it, what makes it a challenger brand. So those are the two. So the Casasa brand is a challenger brand to mega banks because it is a single name national product that you can find in 300 different institutions around the country today. Q1 this year we grew about 80%. So over Q1 last year. So the number of people distributing the product on our behalf continues to grow because it does have that much scale. So that's what I do. So for a living, and this is like my 4th time managing challenger brand. So it's fun, it's also painful at times because there's some rules to it that I sort of have gotten over a period of time. And so these are not, I think if you like take my rules and you like go Google them and figure out if it's legit or not, you're just going to have to take my word for it because I totally made them up based on my experience. But these are the things that when I think about marketing strategy for a challenger brand that I've seen work and not work, and things that I'm cognizant of when I'm building strategy for a challenger brand, right? But if you went to Kellogg, you're not going to find this on their list. I've already covered what's Casasa, but I want you to understand a little bit about the community bank and credit union industry that we serve, just so that you understand how challenger branding fits in with that for us. So in 1994, this line at the bottom represents mega banks and regional banks, right? So from a market share standpoint, their market share was south of 30%, and community banks and credit unions owned a ton of market, over 70%. Today, fast forward less than 20 years, it's completely reversed for community banks and credit unions currently own somewhere in the neighborhood of 27% market share, and mega banks and regional banks have taken over. There's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it is the interaction with consumers on a brand standpoint. Consumers shop for product first, and we'll talk about that for challenger branding. And it definitely drives how they interact with their banking institution, how they make decisions. And so what we see over time is when you're going to be a challenger brand in this environment, we're trying to help this line turn in the other direction by having consistency in the product, consistency in the promotion, so that consumers have okay, yeah, this is legit reason to believe that I can get more, not the same. We don't want them to believe they can get the same thing at a community institution as a mega bank, because we actually believe they can get more. We believe as an institution, and our mission and our value system says, we're going to go fight the battle with communities and credit unions because we believe the service is better, we believe the community integration is better, we believe that the local approach is better for all the local communities, the ability to lend local is important to those communities, and because of that, we want to see that trend reversed really badly. Unfortunately, consumers don't shop that way from those things that I just talked about. They shop based on product and based on the type of things that they're interested in getting, and in many cases, whatever they see last is the thing that they research and do, right? So if they don't see your super free checking or super extra free checking as the last thing because it didn't show up in the mailbox, the email, the social media, and sponsorship, and the advertisement, it's a little bit harder, right? So we're trying to sort of influence that at scale so that we can provide more of those resources to community banks and credit unions to help this trend. That's the challenger brands that I have, right? So it's a lot, and some days it feels like a lot, but it's always a lot of fun. At the end of the day, what we try to become for our institution is a pure product brand. That's it. Someone walks in, or they hear a message. If they hear a message out in their car or see it on the TV, they come in and they do what we want them to do. We want them to find the institution and do that thing down there at the bottom. We just want them to ask for Casasa. Anytime you see one of these actually in the market, it's actually led by the brand of the institution. You'll see one of those a little bit when we do TV. But the institution leads it with their logo, and then it basically says ask for Casasa. Because that's all we want them to do. We want them to understand the product benefits, and we want them to come here and ask for our product, period. But right now, we're able to do that far more reaching than any of our individual financial institutions. We have over 10% national brand awareness right now. So as a young company that pretty much just distributes a Casasa product, that's a pretty good starting point for us. And because of that, when people search, it pops up a lot, right? You just go out to Casasa and it'll pop up if there's one near you, which is great. So let's talk challenger branding for a minute, because there is a very specific method and a very specific sort of academic approach to challenger branding. Has anybody ever read the book, I forgot the name of the book, Eating the Big Fish? Anybody ever read Eating the Big Fish? Okay, so there's a lot of stuff about it. You can find some videos about it as well on YouTube. If you like me and you just want the Cliff Notes version, you can video it. But there's a lot of good stuff about it. But here's basically what it ends up saying. If you're looking at brands and market leadership, you have to look at market share on one side of the axis and growth on the other. And so I'm going to sort of display what goes in each quadrant. So down here in the bottom right, if you have low market share, low growth, you're definitely an underdog. So you could be someone who's fallen into that category, or you could be a startup who's hoping to grow. Make sense? Underdogs. And by the way, I'm using the cartoon theme because for a very specific reason. Over here you have challengers, and in this case, instead of underdog, you guys know that underdog was actually like he's a superhero, right? Old school superhero. And then over here you have Flash Gordon and Thor and Iron Man, right? Each challenger brands to something. So if you think about the movie studios and the movies being published, they're each a challenger brand in one way, shape, or another to the movie industries and the ticket buyers. In the top right now, you have market leaders, right? So the market leader right now, bar none, is the Avengers, right? It's the conglomerate, it's bigger than everybody else. And the ex-champ that it displaced was really Superman. Okay, is this tracking for everybody? Market leaders, underdogs, challengers. Okay, so here's the rule. You can't actually go from being an underdog to being a market leader. It's impossible. You can't do it. You have to be something first. So you have to progress through this sequence, and you can come over here and you can be a challenger brand, and if things work out for you and your brand, you can displace someone or become a market leader, and then you move over here eventually. If things start to slip for you and you're displaced, you move over here eventually and you become an ex-champ, and if you don't correct it and quickly get back to challenger, you will become an underdog, and then you have to decide whether or not you're going to become a challenger again, or whether you do nothing and simply go out of business. That's this arrow. We don't like this arrow a lot. We don't talk about this arrow a lot because it's no fun for anybody. But for us at the company that I run marketing for, we have a lot of customers who fit this category. If you think about that market share slide that we showed a second ago, we have a lot of customers in the industry that fit this category, right? They were once market leaders, right? Huge market leaders, huge share gains. Slipped over into ex-champs and now are clearly underdogs. And they're underdogs for a lot of reasons, not because they meant to be, but because they don't have the budgets, they don't have the capacity, the resources to truly compete as a ex-champ or market leader anymore. And so what we've done is tried to create a single way that you can have more rally points from co-opetition, from multiple institutions doing the same thing with the same voice to move up into this direction. Make sense? Okay, we're going to come back to this because we're going to use it multiple times today. Do you think it's important that people understand it? Because this can look like an academic exercise, right? But people actually do make decisions, good ones and bad ones, based on their knowledge and understanding of this. Here's a bad one, right? Everybody knows the story of Kodak. Did you guys know that Kodak actually developed a digital camera? Did you guys know that? This is a market leader thing, and I want everybody to pay really close attention to this because this is important for you. If you're a challenger brand, the fact that an incumbent market leader might not decide to respond is really important for us, right? Because it allows us to get around them for a little while to gain share and to gain attention of our target customers so that you can actually gain some scale. And that's one of our last rules that we'll talk about in a minute. So it was important for them, they made the wrong decision. It's important today too. This is a quote from Jamie Dimon. He said every time he goes, you guys know who Jamie Dimon is? He's the chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase. He said every time he goes to Silicon Valley, he leaves with a pure understanding that everybody's trying to eat their lunch. He's very, very aware of challenger brands. Very aware of people like Ally, who's Pure Online Bank, very aware of all the people that are just doing mobile-based banking, usually targeting a youthful consumer. Very, very aware. I want to point out that the reason I'm saying that he's aware is because you should never underestimate the power and clout of a market leader. If Jamie Dimon is really, really mad at a brand, he has a lot of things he can do to go to war with that brand. Like for us, like we don't actually intentionally try and make our competitors mad at this point, because some of our competitors are so large that they can price us out of business, right? We've got a fair amount of customers, but you have to follow a few rules when you start doing challenger branding. Okay, so we had a technology company. Would you consider yourself a technology company?
Absolutely.
Okay, technology company. So this is a really interesting distinction. I want to make just a very brief departure from challenger branding to talk about the difference between challengers and disruptors. Okay? This is actually a picture from Pope Benedict's inception or inauguration or whatever they call it when the new Pope comes in, 2005. This is the same one in 2013. You guys notice the difference? No cell phones, all cell phones, right? So there is technical disruption that creates challenger brands occasionally. The key to that is that you have to have the technology product or the product that by and of itself outperforms what's currently happening. Make sense? If your product isn't significantly better, you're not actually a disruptor. Look at this one. Would you say Uber is a disruptor or a challenger? Disruptor. Yeah, not only are they a disruptor, they actually did a really cool thing. They found an industry that was so disheveled, so unmanaged, and so unowned that a single disruption took over a mass amount of business almost overnight, right? Very rare that this is a product-driven disruptor. I wouldn't even say they're a challenger because they didn't have to challenge anybody. There was no one market leader who owned a space, right? They created a new space out of something that existed. So they're a true, pure disruptor, not a challenger. This is a great story. Anybody ever heard this story? You might have seen this, a picture similar to this about a grocery store in Korea. Yeah. You ever seen this one? Grocery store in Korea, they're a market leader. They're getting attacked in lots of places. They slowly move over to where they're losing share consistently. This is a Subway, not a grocery store. Okay? So that's the interesting thing. This company basically said, I'm going to take a giant board and I'm going to put it up on the wall so when people get off of the subway, they can just like scan what they need for groceries that night. And they're going to scan it, and this guy's going to walk home, and he's going to walk past his grocery store, and his groceries are going to be waiting on him. Because where they were, they didn't have the ability to put more footprint. They couldn't get bigger. They couldn't buy the space and get bigger. They needed a different way to distribute. You'll also notice the next theme that we're going to get into is about segmentation. How many aisles of groceries do you see? One. Think they picked those products on purpose? Yeah, they pick the products they know people want on a high consumption basis that are high turnover products that are beneficial for them. In this case, they're a challenger and a disruptor.
It looks like they have multiple of the same products. If you're scanning this, why do they do that?
Because there's multiple people getting off the subway.
So two people queue up, I can scan it. That's interesting.
There's no line. You just walk by and you scan it, and there can be like, these are the high volume products, right? And so multiple people getting off the subway, nobody wants to slow down. I'm going to click on my products. Hit it, it's going to be waiting on me, right? So there's not that many products here. Very targeted challenger and disruption. So this is a company that went into from market leadership over to ex-champ and pulled themselves back out of it through this type of mechanism. Okay? Lots of ways to do this. So the answer to this question is, I think you can be a challenger without being a disruptor. In the cases we just saw, you don't have to be, but in the case of like the company that I'm with, we're not actually disrupting, we're providing checking accounts. Now they're cool checking accounts. And the banks that we offer it through and the credit unions we offer it through, they make more money on our accounts than most other accounts that they make. And the consumer also makes more money because of the way they're financially engineered. So it's a pretty cool account. But I wouldn't necessarily call it a disruptor as much as a challenger because you guys already all have checking accounts and this is another one. Make sense? Okay. Again, we're back to this. So just a refresher, remember where we're going. Growth from one side to the other. You cannot go from here to there. You cannot go from here to there. The grocery store in Korea that we just talked about, from here to here to here, and then back to here. That's kind of a long journey. You can shorten it by having really good decisions and making them quickly and executing against it. But it is difficult. Getting from here to here, a little bit shorter path, but it's also pretty risky because you have to have resources to do this. You have to start at a place and you have to pick your battles and do it wisely and take specific investments that might help you grow into this. It doesn't happen overnight. It's usually a years process, not a months or quarters process. but you see results pretty immediately. And that's what's the encouraging part. If you're doing it well, you do see results pretty fast. And then over time, you can move back up to a market leadership position. Or at the very least, you stay in a challenger position and you consistently have growth, right? And you may just be another option. You may be an alternative to the market leader. And that's okay too. You continue to have growth, you continue to have your share of the market, you just don't have the market leadership position. That's okay too. Does anybody know the concept of contraction? I'm departing a little bit now, but do you know that when you're going from here to here, how do you do that without saying, I'm just taking on the big guy? I'm just going to take on the big guy. You know the concept of contraction? As marketers, when you define your value proposition, you have to pick a position in the market, right? So the best way to pick your position in the market and be super focused on it is not to pick the market. You keep contracting the market down until there's something that you can be the leader in. Now, I don't know why this is true, but this is how consumers think. If you tell them you're the leader in it, they believe you. If you don't tell them that, they assume there are lots of other people too. So what you want to do is have a consistent thing that you can contract your market small enough to say, we are the leader in X. For instance, so for the Casasa brand, we are the leader in providing branded, community-powered banking innovation that is profitable for our institutions. Okay, so think about how tightly we did that. We got Jack Henry out of the mix. We got Fiserv out of the mix, right? Because it says we only provide branded to community banks and credit unions, which means we won't do it for a regional bank or mega bank. Okay, so now we're not doing something directly against them, which is really, really important. Because sometimes when you have a startup company or a young company, you really, really, really feel invincible. I got the best ideas, and this is me, man. This, by the way, we have a lot of Spartan lore at our office. We have this stuff everywhere, right? Because the Battle of Thermopylae is a challenger brand battle. If you research the Battle of Thermopylae, it is about, remember the movie 300? It is about 300 people against 10,000. That is actually what happened. And so we have a lot of this stuff all over the place. And you may feel invincible. But one of the things that we don't sometimes talk about when we talk about the Battle of Thermopylae is that it kind of ended like this. And this is all that's left, this little pod of them. And these are all of the people that are attacking. So they're completely surrounded by a more formidable opponent. And that is rule number one. Be careful going head to head because it's dangerous to dance with elephants. When you go head to head, you have to remember you are taking on a formidable market leader who has pricing power. They can afford to subsidize losses on something if you really bother them. So you have to be careful about what you go after. Formidable market leaders, you have to have a little bit of patience and have specific planning to go after what they currently do extremely well. Remember how I defined our value proposition? Branded, community power, banking product, and very specific words that define what we're after. In this case, you have to understand their offerings. Find things that they care less about is probably a great way to do it. Those are great things to position yourself as. And then aggressively take that ownership position. Once you know what you're after, you can be really aggressive at that thing, right? So rule number one, pick wisely before you go and just say, we're going to take on the biggest competitor that there is. You have to be ready to do that. Unless your technology or your product is so clearly market leading that you don't have to worry about that. The consumer demand will support you immediately. If you're not yet there and you're in an already mature industry, which most of us are, if you're in a mature industry already or a maturing industry that's not sort of a nascent industry where it's sort of the wild, wild west, once you're in a mature industry, you really do have to pick specifically how you go after the big market leader. Rule number two. So how do you go after them if your product is somewhat similar? Because ours is similar. And the way that we do it is through segmentation. Remember, I have two brands. How many people in here use Prism segmentation, formerly Nielsen Claritas, or formerly Claritas, now by Nielsen, Axiom Data, any of that kind of stuff? Anybody use those? Okay. Do the rest of you know about them? Just out of curiosity, everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? Super important. The reason that it's important is because it allows you to pick your target consumers based on the potential client lifetime value that they're going to provide back to you or to the institution, in our case, that we would be doing this on their behalf. And so we pick very specifically. This is actually a map that is one of our customers. So we find where the high quality, high target customers are going to be to have the highest client lifetime value, and then we go after them. It's a very efficient way to be a young challenger brand because you don't have the money to do air cover in 100% of the United States. So you have to pick, especially in the stuff that we do, which is financial services marketing. In order for us to go after them, you have to hit multiple tactics. You can't just run an ad. You can't just do a sponsorship. You actually have to be there when they're shopping. And I'll give you some stats on that in a minute. But sometimes the last person with the mic does win, right? So you have to do a lot of these things really well. You have to do some advertising. You have to have great online. And I'm going to show you the stat again in a minute, but I can't reinforce it enough. 88% of people who buy our product research it online first. How many people in here bought an important product to you without researching it online first in the last like 5 years? Right, you just don't do it, right? So for a bank to think that they don't too is just crazy because that's the first thing that they do. So you keep your focus narrow because it does buy you some time. It garners a little bit less attention, like my brand specifically, even when I was at Career Builder. We had no attention from anybody, which was great, until we suddenly owned all of the newspaper distribution. And then it was too late, right? Once you have scale, it's too late for the response. And so you have to sort of pick and choose wisely. For us on the consumer side, we know an awful lot about our consumers and the consumers who buy our products and how profitable they are. This is what we call a second city market for us. So in second city markets, Nashville qualifies as that. Places like Bloomington, Illinois, Fargo, Colorado Springs, lots of places where they're a little bit smaller, they're not a huge metro. And most of them, by the way, border like rural areas, lots of rural areas nearby. So second city markets for us, these are the people that we go after. And we know everything about them. We know what they buy, when they buy, how much discretionary income they have, how many financial products they buy, what their next most likely to buy is, where they vacation, cars in the driveway, boats in the driveway, how many kids, how they consume media, how much they use social media. We have one of these for all three types of markets that we're primary in. One for metro, one for second city, one for rural. One of the really interesting things that is not up here because I just ran out of space was that in the rural market specifically, all of these people actually use cell phones as cell phones. This is crazy. So if your marketing tactic is to go after that person with digital and mobile, you're totally lost. You're just blowing through cash. You have to know the customer. You have to know them. Because here in Nashville, or in Austin, where our headquarters are, or in Atlanta, where I live, you can go after customers like these whose digital consumption says, hey, I'm gonna use my cell phone as a phone occasionally, but I text a lot. I use a lot of other mobility apps. Once we get into our rural markets, it doesn't really look like that yet. They still check email at night when they get home, which is fine, but you have to understand that in order to target them and win. So for us, we look at all these demographics before we do things when we build marketing plans for each of the institutions we work with, so that we understand age, household income, consumption behavior, what percentage of the population they are, and then on the right, what's their revenue index for our organization, right? What's the revenue index in our product? We have this one down here, the conservative maturers, which actually doesn't index very high, but what's not up here is that they buy lots of extra products. So in a checking account, they might not be the perfect checking customer, but we know for sure that they buy a lot of other stuff once they get there because they're money. So we go after them too. We like them. Make sense? So that's consumer segmentation. Does everybody understand why you would do that if you're a challenger brand? By the way, you know who else does this? And who does it fabulously well? Market leaders. If you underestimate their intelligence, you will be the person who loses in the dance of elements because they absolutely know this stuff. They're really good at it. You guys know Geico? Everybody knows Geico, right? Their commercials today are, they have Camel, I don't remember what else they've got out right now, but right now they got Camel and one other one that used to have the Caveman. And so when they were testing media on different markets, did you guys ever see the one that was like Cabbage Patch Kid? Huge Cabbage Freaky, just a giant Cabbage Patch Kid walking around. And they had another one that was the Beverly Hillbillies. Did you guys see those? Okay. So the reason you didn't see them is because they were market testing. They had specific items that attract a specific group of people who would understand what a Beverly Hillbilly and a Cabbage Patch doll is. And they created ads for it to see if it made the acquisition of that person go up. They did not do that because they wanted to be the brand. They did it because they were after someone who would attach to that product. Super smart, right? They are very, very intelligent. They do this a lot. Okay. So on the B2B side, how many people in here are running B2B? Okay. This, on the B2B side, you don't want to be the person holding the hose. It's not mass communication. On the B2B side, segmentation is about really knowing not the demographics of the institutions you're after, but the firmographics and understanding what their specific needs are. Because a lot of people are after them, right? A lot of people are after the same institutions, even if it's for a different thing. Like, I'm a buyer. So at my institution, I would be a buyer if you're a B2B marketer. Because I'm a CMO, right? I have budget. So, but I don't just get calls from one type of vendor. I get calls across the whole spectrum for people that have different B2B products. If you don't know what I'm interested in or understand my business, I'm probably not even going to take the call. So mass communication like this, you waste a lot. You really have to be targeted. Because what happens when I start getting mass communication as a buyer, or you guys, what do you start doing? Get a lot of email. First one may be interesting. What happens to the next 10? I mean, that delete button it's only about 2 inches away. So when you hit it pretty regularly, you have to understand when you're going to add value to a B2B customer. And so you can't just be about mass communication to that customer. You have to be about creating value for that customer. For us, on the B2B side of our business, when we segment the experience we want them to have from the day we first interact with them. We know who they are. You guys probably know who your customers are going to be in your market. For us, we look at it as a client journey. We started this actually, and this is a good way to start it. We started this by building a sales process. What is the exact sales process we want institutions to go through when they're doing business with us? And we really quickly found out that a sales process wasn't going to meet the needs of our B2B audience, right? It wasn't the experience we wanted them to have, because we don't want them to feel like they're being sold all the time. We're a partner. Our mission is to help. We want them to love that. We want them to love us for trying to do that with them. And so we want them to have a full client journey that starts by us understanding their need, giving them the things that they need, then becoming a customer of ours, and then over time launching, going through the review process, making sure that we're with them. Our contracts are typically 5 years long, so they're going to be with us for a while. And so we can build a tight relationship after they become a customer. Becoming a customer for us is way over here. There's a lot of time left. And we want them to keep thinking they would make that decision again and again. So understanding that need, this is about the fire hose that was on the prior pages, right? If you don't understand the need, it's just a lot of noise. And your buyer has to figure that out. And I can't possibly figure that out for 10 different industries. There's just no way. And I'm not going to spend the time to do it because I got a job. So for us on the B2B side, it is really about developing specific targets. Like, we know who they are. We know there's over 13,000 community banks and credit unions in the United States that are target customers. But different ones are different things. I mean, the community bankers in here understand the loan to deposit ratio and that kind of stuff. So we go after specific loan to deposit ratios, not because we think we're going to make more money on it, but because we actually think they need us more if their loan to deposit ratio says they need deposits, because we're ready to get them. But if you've got a 60 loan to deposit ratio, it basically means that you have a lot of deposits that are not lent out, right? So 60, 100 being the index at par, and loaning out every dollar that comes in the door. If you're 60, you've got a lot of cash. You need loan help. You don't need stock help, right? You need loan help. I mean, you may need customers, and we have other products for that too to help us with account growth, but it's not deposit. So develop targets, know their value. So know the value of those targets that you're after. Know the value of the institutions you're wanting to do business with, and understand their interests. So what did I just tell you guys? I just told you I know my customers, right? Loan to deposit ratio, some of them are looking for accounts, some of them simply want to get younger. We have specific educational material about all of those things to help them be better at all of them. And our products mirror that. We don't have 80 products, but we have products that can help you grow deposits, can help you get younger, and can help you get specific types of accounts in the door. Outside of that, you need to be talking to another vendor. We will over time grow, because that's what market leaders do. They expand their services. And then finally, once you know who they are, you got to nurture them. You can't be the garden hose approach. You got to do a little bit better than that. You have to actually talk to them about things they want to be talked about. Does that make sense? Because if you don't, just like all of us, right, just delete that stuff. I mean, how many people have turned off old email accounts that are like Google or your Gmail account or your first one or your old Yahoo account? And you're like, man, I don't even want to deal with opting out of all the spam that thing's getting. I'm just going to shut it down and open a new one, right? It seems like I have to do that every few years. And so I'm constantly changing because I don't feel like opting out of that much stuff anymore. I'm just done with it. You don't want to be that person. Rule number 3, after you have decided not to go head to head, and after you have then decided that you have to segment, you still, to be a challenger brand, have to get some attention. I love that, by the way. I laughed hysterically when I saw it. It's just classic. Anyway, eventually challenger brands are remembered for something. And the easiest place to start is actually tonality. It is actually messaging. It is actually personality. Paul started when he was talking about us. For us, it's culture. Like if you come to Austin and come to an event that we call BTAN that we do every month, we have new prospective customers in. We tell them about our products, but it's close to a tip revival. I mean, we want them to love the culture and the mission that we're on. So they come and they leave with it. I mean, if you leave Austin and you come to see us and you don't actually believe that we believe the mission, we missed totally. We completely missed. And we actually live that way every day, even when customers aren't there. Like it is very, very important to us. That passion is super important, and it comes across in our tonality and the personality of the organization. You have to take some risks. I do think you should start with tone and personality. Having a great product is super important. I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. And sometimes the great thing about having a tone or personality that's different than a market leader, you know what they do? They think you're a flashing thing. They totally ignore it. They're like, I don't know, it's cute. We never do that. I've actually been at that company. I ran strategy and big chunk of the marketing organization for Country Financial for 9 years. I have seen plenty of challenger brands come up. We had 27 different product lines in financial services. They come along. Some of them made it, and we ignore them anyway. Like, we're just going to ignore them. Because we have so many other things to do, we just ignored them and let them grow. We didn't think they could get market share from us anyway. And in some cases, we were right. In some cases, we were wrong. Because it is tough to be a challenger. The point is, tone and personality can set you apart, and it's in a way that they're not always going to respond to, because you're not like throwing it in their face all the time, right? It's setting you apart as a brand that a consumer wants to do business with. They're attracted to you because of who you are as well as what you offer, right? That's a key part of being a challenger brand. You want them to want to be part of you. I already covered that. So this is one of our ads. It's kind of interesting. So if you were looking at a print ad that one of our institutions run, like we build this on their behalf for all the Kasasa institutions. And the reason we do it is because there's 300 of them, and we want them all to use the same stuff as much as possible. You don't have to use it only. You want to use as much as possible because it does create one voice that is more competitive against that market share decline. If everybody's talking about the same thing, you can search it, you can find it right down the street. It's easier, it creates scale and the perception of scale for consumers. It creates a reason to believe that there is something there. And it does look different. If you look at most community bank advertisement, it doesn't actually say things like it's like your money got married and had money babies. That's not the tone that most of them have. And sometimes the community banks and credit unions work, they're like, man, I don't know about that. I'm not totally sure that that's what I want to be saying. But what it does is they say it a lot, actually. It's probably the number one objection that I get as a CMO. I don't know if I want to say that. And you know what I tell them? I tell them all the same thing. I don't do the finger. That was the bad one. I tell them all the same thing. There's a lot of stuff that we create that I don't like either. These people like it. These people like it a lot. You want these people? It doesn't really matter what you think. Your job as an executive and as a leader of the company is to make sure you're turning it upside down and connecting with the consumer first. So if you find something they believe and that they love, you are automatically getting to them. I have plenty of people. I've said it too. I said, man, I don't like that. And the team sometimes reminds me, and they're like, yeah, but it's tested great because we tested.
Kasasa.
Yeah, Kasasa, right? Do you know? So Kasasa spelled with an A when it first came out. When we first tested it, there were some struggles with the testing because it was originally spelled with an I, K-I-S-A-S-A. If you write it down, you'll see the flaw in our original naming. You got it? Okay. All right. If you don't get it, write it down real quick and you'll understand what it said and why the testing didn't go quite as well as we thought it was going to go. All right, so we'll get back to where we were before. Okay, so I'm going to run an ad. I'm going to run a couple of ads to show you that sometimes, so these are our most recent ad campaign. And what I want you to take away from it is a couple of things. One, Freedom Institution is ours for a demo institution, so we throw in a lot of stuff so that no bank or credit union feels left out when we're doing promotions. So when we go out in the public like this, we always use Freedom Institution. This is where a bank or credit union's brand would be. They're presenting what's coming next. And then the stuff that we have next is specifically intended to connect with people who are interested in the community. It has a YouTube-esque feel because it feels a little bit more homegrown, right? It's very product promotional, tells you what you should do with your product, and at the same time, it's kind of fun to watch.
Freedom Institution proudly brings you Kasasa. What's Kasasa? It's a catchy word for earning cash that just might make you want to dance. Get paid for doing simple things you do anyway. That's free Kasasa checking. Ask for Kasasa by name at Freedom Institution.
Okay, so all of this, everything, by the way, did that look like all the community bank advertisements that you guys normally see? Okay, job one's done. Did it look like all the other mega bank ads? So what it should feel is local, which is what we want our community banks and credit unions to market, because it is the, sort of the underbelly and most important underbelly of the financial institution, in my opinion, because they do most of the lending in the United States. It's who small businesses who promote our country. Super important, right? So we want it to feel local. We want it to feel like there's a local connection. We also want people to know there's a great product. The tonality is something that they can have a reason to believe. They don't have to just listen to Samuel L. Jackson. They can also listen to people that are local that offer great product, right? Specific connection to that group. This is the second one. This one's a little bit more specific on a single tested product element that consumers respond to.
Freedom Institution proudly brings you Kasasa. What's Kasasa? It's like never getting surprised. Bank local and will refund your ATM fees nationwide. That's free Kasasa checking. Ask for Kasasa by name at Freedom Institution.
Right, so what do you think that consumers like about that one? Huh? It's funny. It's fun to watch, but at the same time, what else did they take away from it? Free ATM fees, right? Rewarded refunds back for ATM usage. Why do you think that's important to community banks and credit unions? Because their networks are smaller. It is one of the things that consumers say, I don't know if I'm going to do business with this person because there's not an ATM in every city I go to. I don't want to pay ATM fees. It is actually a very serious product issue that is based on the footprint of the organization. And so what we try to do is make sure that they're like, hey man, you can use it wherever you want to go.
Is that perception versus actuality? I mean, how many people really use ATMs anymore? But like that things, their mind means they don't have that option.
Yeah.
Is it actually, it's like, by saying, hey, you get free ATM, it doesn't really ding you that much because people don't take advantage of it because they don't really use ATMs anymore. Right? Is that accurate or no?
We'll let the bankers respond.
It's a generational thing.
Yeah.
So there's still a bunch of
Still
old
have
folks that are,
population that are ready to use these things.
Really?
Yeah.
And debit cards too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, like one of the things that draws people to the Kasasa product is not just the promotional element, right? This fact it's a really good product. So you can promote as an institution a 2.5% interest rate on a checking account right now. 2.5% is pretty good for checking. As a matter of fact, it's pretty good for any type of a return. In order to get that, you have to do a few things. You have to swipe your debit card, you have to take e-statements. Those things drive profit and value for the institution, and they do connect more with people like you're saying. We also, if you're doing those things, in addition to getting interest rate, you get ATM refunds nationwide. So what do you think happens to consumer behavior when they start using the debit card all the time?
Stop using ATMs.
Bang. They actually stop using ATMs, just like you said. They start swiping that debit card because we tell them they have to do it a certain number of times a month. And then it gets kind of cumbersome to go to the ATM machine. It's like, man, I'm standing at the grocery store. It's asking me if I want money back. I don't feel like going to the bank and driving through their teller line and finding an ATM. I just get to do it right here. ATM usage, down. Fees, down. It's great for the consumer. It's great for the institution. It's fantastic, right? Literally, our product helps change the behavior of people that are already at some institutions to adopt their accounts because they want the interest and they want the free ATMs. I'm going to skip this one. Let me just say that we have like 25 different radio commercials that we run, and they have a broad selection from being conservative to being we wrote our own songs that are super cheesy, but you would absolutely remember them if you heard them in the market, because we're trying to get their attention and promote a product in a way that someone's going to remember.
We want to hear you.
You hear one? All right. Wait a second. Oh, hold on. I have to go over here to do that.
Do the cheesiest one.
Do the cheesiest one. Okay, hang on. So, okay, so now specifically, we wrote these commercials. They are actually supposed to sound this way. So I just want to point that out in advance.
It's all in the category of one you don't like, but the consumer.
Qualifications and rules apply. See institution for details.
What's Kasasa? Well, here's your answer.
Don't worry about that $4 charge. Withdraw your money by any means legal.
He means use an ATM.
Kasasa brings back the fees you pay like a golden money retriever.
Golden what?
Yeah, use the closest ATM, whichever one that may be.
Right, it's free Kasasa checking. It's like any ATM is your ATM.
Do a simple thing to do anyway, but before your ATM fees.
Agreed. Free Kasasa checking gives you 40 free access to any ATM nationwide.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Well, yeah, then you can earn your ATM fees back each month.
Ask for Kasasa.
You should do that.
Ask for free Kasasa checking by name at Freedom Institution or go online at freedominstitution.com.
Okay, so I've delivered this presentation with that thing in it a bunch of times, and the reaction was exactly like this room. Part of you laugh, and the other part of you is like, I would never play that, right? And that's but okay, so I'll play one more. That response, because I have a responsibility to make sure all of our customers have what they need, that response is also the reason that we have things like this.
Qualifications and rules apply. See institution for details.
Last play of the game, folks.
And the snap, drops back. Whoa, changes mind. Now the sideline. The 40, the 30, the 20, the 10. Kasasa! Unbelievable! Didn't you see that? Kasasa!
Not to be a buzzkill, but what's Kasasa? We're glad you asked that. Kasasa. It's a catchy word for earning cash. Free Kasasa checking rewards you in cash each month.
Ask for Kasasa by name at Freedom Institution.
Okay, so what do you think a lot of the institutions that we do business with get involved with in their local communities? Sports. Lots of sports, right? They have one of these, it's a walk-off home run, they got basketball, they got touchdowns. You know, I mean, this actually feels more in line with their normal mainstream marketing. So if we have a very conservative institution, they're going to pick stuff like this. If we have somebody that's a little bit more aggressive and wants to get a lot more attention, and they rely on the radio a lot, they're going to have some of that, but they're going to run these ATM fee songs too. We got maybe 5 of those. They're different sort of things we wrote. Okay, everybody, that makes sense on what we're talking about for marketing. Okay, so rule number 4, aggressive product displacement. You still can't win if you don't have something better, right? You actually have to market something occasionally that actually provides the value you say it's going to provide. So aggressive product displacement is actually one of the keys to winning, and you have to present as sort of a new and different thing. That's kind of the marketing approach, right? It feels new and different compared to what other community banking advertisement often looks and feels like. And you have to sort of aggressively create new capabilities. Okay, so what that means is that challenger branding and challenger development takes a while. So if you go through these stages, we've now got marketing in the market, we're connecting to consumers. During this stage 4, where you're doing product displacement, you're promoting your product, you have to invest at this stage, because you're still not on full attack mode, you're still getting your target consumers, you have to use that cash and that love that they're giving you to invest back in internal capabilities. Because once you gain the attention of the market leaders, you have to have some capabilities. You have to be able to do research. You have to be able to understand your customers. You have to be able to offer them the things they order. This is the time right now. When you've got the great product, you've got to invest in that before you get so much attention that all of your energy is eaten up going to market. Because that's what happens next. You have to invest in the core capabilities to be a great marketing organization, a great product distribution organization. At this point, to be a challenger brand. Again, that's not I don't know if you guys can Kellogg Park can say the same thing. I've done it 3 or 4 times. I can say this is the stage when you start building capabilities. You've learned how to find them. You've learned how to attract them. You've learned how to keep them for a while. Now you have to invest in something that will truly scale. This is when you get that scale. So here's an interesting fact. If you take all the stuff that we talked about for marketing before for financial institutions, this is my reality, not probably everybody else's. 40% of consumers say before they buy something, they already know which brand they're going to pick. 40% of the people who switched in the last 2 years said that. Isn't that crazy? They already know before they even open an account at another institution. In their minds, they thought they already knew. Okay? 40%, the other 40%, or the next 40%, is actually driven by ads to switch. They're driven by a product promotion with an institution they think they'll like to switch. 40% available, 40% say they've already done their thing, they already know what they want. Does that make sense? So those are the numbers. So why do 88% of them go online?
So they want to see the product?
They're product shopping. They may think they know the brand, but how hard is it once you come up with, here's the institution I thought I wanted to go hit Google and ask it one more question? Doesn't take any time. So if you're not there, that is the place that you have to promote the product. 88% still go online searching for the right product, so you have to be it in their mind. You have to have that stuff available for them. SEO has to be great. You have to be online. You have to be in social, or it doesn't work. 40% of them believe they already know the answer, and yet they still go online to search. If you're not there, you're not even going to be in the game. Because they were right. 40% of them already knew, so they're just going to pick what they thought they knew. If you're not in that competition, you're out. 40% of them knew. Or you have to have a ton of advertising to get the other 40%. Rule number 5. So when you attack, you have to attack when you already have scale. You have to have raving fans before you actually get in the limelight of major competitors. You have to do these things that we talked about here. You have to create aggressive building of internal capabilities so that it supports your ability to then move from the challenger quadrant into the market leader quadrant. If you don't have those capabilities, you won't make it across that chasm. It's impossible. You can't scale that fast. Someone will buy you, which is also good. You will have to buy other people's capabilities, which is also expensive and risky. Right? It is super risky to buy other people, even if you think it's going to be good. Done it plenty of times, it was tough. You have to actually build those capabilities that you know you're going to need that make your customers happy. You have to build those at this stage, because once you get here, they will leave if they're not happy. And once they're not happy, you're sort of left in attack mode all by yourself. But once you have the scale of the consumer and the customers, you can then go on the attack for what you actually say your mission is. Our company's getting pretty close to that, in my opinion. So if you're in a market where you see Kasasa, you'll see some specific changes that allow us to drive switching behavior to all of our customers starting later this year, because we believe that we're at scale now to drive that and help reverse that trend for next. But we didn't have that before. When we were 50 institutions in our roster, there's no way to do that. But when there's 300 and growing, like Q1 this year, we grew 80% compared to Q1 last year, number of institutions signing up. With that type of growth and scale, we do feel like that, A, we owe it to all of them to drive switching behavior, and B, they're supportive enough that we can actually do it. So the other thing, it can take years for multi-line conglomerates to respond, which is also great. It takes them a while to get back around to. And then I think I've covered all these things. So that's it. I have some questions in there if you want to find out if you are a challenger brand. These are some things that I thought that I've noticed the difference between challengers and not challengers. If you answer yes to all these questions, like do you have a big marketing budget, do you have a lot of people on your team, you're probably not a challenger brand. You're probably already in one of the other categories. You're an ex-champ, or you're one of the market leaders, right? If you have big budget, you have the ability to have waste, right? And that waste, it drives some type of behavior. But the waste is very interesting. Also, if you have sort of more vendor calls than LinkedIn connections, you probably also are a market leader. And then this is the right? I had it on the market slide, the market leader slide. You know why you can't just be the same as the market competitor, take them on head on all the time? It's because once you're a market leader, you own something. Take Tide, for instance. You can't take Tide on and be whiter than Tide. How the hell are you going to be whiter than Tide? In the mind of every consumer, Tide makes clothes the whitest. I can't go tell everybody whiter than Tide because they're the I can't out-Tide. I can't do it. I can't be faster than Superman. That's why I use Superman, right? I can't be faster as an individual. That's why the Iron Man and the Thor and Flash Gordon would never displace Superman from being the market leader. It took a conglomerate of all of them because as a group, they were more interesting than Superman, right? That's the only way to display stuff. You can't out-er a market leader. So if you're the if you are the you are definitely not a challenger brand. So you may be a challenger brand if what you're doing has some level of unique swagger that you're trying to attract your consumers with. There's some clear things, but if you have to watch every nickel, you probably fit with me. You try and do things in a little bit of an unconventional way intentionally because they get attention. You might actually have, at the very least, challenger brand DNA. If you focus on product first, you probably also fit into a challenger brand mentality, right? Because you're trying to do something that's different than everybody else. All right, that's all I got. You guys have questions? And I have more time, so you guys take however much time you want. We get 5 or 6 minutes.
On that last slide, isn't that relative on the market that you're in?
Yeah, I'd say it is to some degree. I mean, that's not a perfect like questionnaire checklist of if you're a challenger brand or not. But at the end of the day, most people that are in challenger environments have challenging environments, right? They have a lack of budget, constant product changes, always up against people with more budget and more ability to go to market. They're usually segmented by what market they're in, and they have to really do well in that market before they can expand to adjacent markets. Market leaders don't usually have that problem because they have multi-lines, and they can go to market with a lot of stuff at one time under one brand. So even if, like, I'll give you a great example. Like when I was at Country Financial, we had 2,500 locations. And so we would go market a direct marketing piece directly to a consumer about long-term care insurance, right? Most of the time they didn't buy it, but we would market it to a specific person who should be buying it and probably had the concern. We'd market to it, set an appointment, someone would go see them. They didn't sell a lot of long-term care insurance. They sold life insurance because it's cheaper. I point that out because in that instance, we had the product lines as a conglomerate where it didn't matter. I could be inefficient and still get that market, right? Whereas if you're a smaller company, that doesn't really work. If you market long-term care and that's all you got, man, you better be selling some long-term care because you don't have the next product beside. You don't have adjacent markets that you can win.
Well, that kind of goes to the question that I had, which is, can you be in multiple positions with different products? I mean, you've got some products that you go to market as a challenger with, but where it's a new product, somebody else dominates that product segment.
I think that's probably fair.
You're a leader or challenger at least in another segment.
I think that's probably fair, but you don't stay challenger that long usually because if you're already a market leader and you're launching a challenger product that's not under a new brand, right? It's a challenger product. What usually happens is the conglomerate's marketing sort of pulls a lot of those customers along, and you usually have a big base of customers across markets too. So it's not like you're starting from scratch. So yes, but the cycle probably doesn't last as long. Other questions? Yes, ma'am?
Can you talk a little bit about choosing the tone that you pick? Because I feel like a lot of challenger companies, they kind of have the same personality leading the charge. Someone who has that quirky sense of humor, tongue in cheek, and so just talk a little bit about how you guys evolve your tone.
Yes, so our tone's actually changed quite a lot as we've grown. So initially, I think that the brand was very much about the brand. It was just about Kasasa. Over the last couple of years, we've toned that part way back and become a very serious product brand rather than a brand. We don't want to be confused with the institutions that offer us. And so we don't ever want to feel like we're competitive with them from a branding standpoint. So we personally are very specific to have tonality that feels local, right? And at the same time, messaging that has driver behavior. So when we do messaging, I break the messages down into ANSI messages, driver messages, and reassurance messages. Reassurance messages are things like, I've been in business for 140 years. It's great. Please don't run that in an ad campaign. Nobody's ever going to buy your product because of it. You should absolutely have it on the website. Nobody's ever going to buy a product because of it. They just don't do it. Even when financial services melted down, I ran campaigns like that for 3 months. It took 3 months for the impact to go away. Because that's just not what you're shopping for. You're shopping for a product. So we went very product heavy. Product messages have driver benefits that you can attach to. ATM refunds, high interest rates, cash back for us, right? Those types of things. So that's how ours has evolved. It's less about the tone. Tone is still an underlying element, but it's about being local and having a clear product benefit for us.
Presumably you're using targeted advertising and stuff as well, but you show TV and radio. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So we We use TV and radio. We don't advertise in places where our target consumers don't hang out. So like when we look at their behaviors, and a lot of the target consumers that we're after in markets like football, right? We already talked about that, so we advertise a lot of that kind of stuff. They like specific channels too, right? We actually have a lot of people hang out on the History Channel. Right. Those are things that kind of score high for our best customers. So that's the way we take local cable if we're doing TV. Print's the same. Radio, we use Pandora a ton. It works really well for us because we can target through it and we get a specific, you can just pick the tone and the interest and the location. So super targeted. Those things work really well for us in more traditional media. Digital is hyper targeted. We do everything from targeting search to regular page search to geofencing and mobile ads.
Yeah, so when it comes to digital advertising, you're talking about that rural community and how they're not really engaged all day long. Some of those kind of more rural banks. How do you bring that to the table as digital is a value, yet those people aren't displaced, yet 88% of people are still going back online? How do you have that conversation? And it seems like a rural bank, they might have not been introduced to the digital space before, and they don't really know how much money is really needed to be competitive in a space like that.
I think that's probably true sometimes. The way that we approach it is we make sure their online presence is validating to whoever finds them that they are that they've come to the right place, right? You don't want it to look really bad, and sometimes the players have to catch up a little bit. So we do offer some web design services to help them a little bit, so that it looks like like I found the right place, right? I trust it's a credible, valid provider that I found, and I'm willing to talk to them about it because they do searches. So in your example, SEO, and we do one of the most efficient ways to do it in rural markets. We do a lot of paid search. And we also do it based on sort of seasonality in rural markets. In the rural market, for instance, there are a lot of farm business and ag business still in most rural markets in the United States. And so, you can advertise a lot in the summer if you want to. I personally recommend events during the summer because if you advertise, nobody's got any money. They have money when the crops come in the fall, and then they have loans in the spring, right? So when money's in motion is when you want to hit those rural markets. For us, anyway. Summer is more of a be present. But money's in motion for our consumers when they bring the crops in and when they come to the bank loans. Because literally, if you have a crop and you take it to a grain silo, I don't know if you guys know what that is. Take it to a grain silo, it's like it's like going to the bank. They're just going to give you, they're giving you money, right? You're selling your good, and I leave there with money. It's great. So that's when we want to be more heavily advertising.
All right. Well, thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
We'll withdraw the formal part of this to a close, but I encourage you to hang out, and if you have any more questions, talk with Keith directly up here. Yeah. All right, thanks everyone. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.